The Mystery of D.B. Cooper. America's Unsolved Hijacking. On November 24, 1971, an ordinary flight from Portland to Seattle turned into one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 was only a 30-minute journey, with just 36 passengers and 6 crew members on board. However, amidst the calm of the flight, a man who called himself Dan Cooper, later known as D.B. Cooper, executed a hijacking that would baffle authorities for decades. Dressed in a typical businessman's outfit, a suit, white shirt, and black tie, Cooper appeared to be just another passenger. He boarded the plane quietly and sat at the rear, in seat 18E. Shortly after takeoff, he called over a flight attendant named Florence Schaffner. He handed her a note, which at first, she didn't take seriously. She assumed it was just a flirtatious attempt, something she had seen before from passengers. But Cooper quickly corrected her. "Miss, you better read that note. I have a bomb." Shocked, Schaffner read the note carefully, which instructed her to sit beside him. Cooper discreetly opened his briefcase, revealing red sticks, wires, and a battery, enough to convince Schaffner that he wasn't bluffing. His demands were simple yet daring: $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck ready to refuel the plane when it landed in Seattle. The threat was clear: if anyone tried to stop him, he would blow up the plane. Schaffner informed the pilots, who immediately contacted air traffic control. The airline's president, Donald Nyrop, made the bold decision to comply with all of Cooper's demands. The priority was to avoid panic, keep the hijacking under wraps, and ensure the safety of everyone on board. While the FBI worked to gather the money and parachutes, the pilots circled Seattle for nearly 3 hours, extending what was supposed to be a short flight into a long and tense waiting game. Throughout the ordeal, the passengers remained unaware of the hijacking. The pilots announced a minor technical issue to explain the delay, and the passengers accepted it without question. Meanwhile, another flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, sat with Cooper, maintaining calm and keeping him at ease. Her composure throughout the hijacking earned her praise later on, with the co-pilot commenting that no one could have handled the situation better than she did. Finally, the plane landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport at 5:46 p.m. Per Cooper's instructions, it was parked far from the main terminal, and a representative from the airline delivered the ransom money and parachutes. Once Cooper received the cash, he allowed the passengers and most of the crew to leave the plane. Only Mucklow and the pilots remained as the plane was refueled and prepared for the next part of Cooper's plan. With the $200,000 secured, Cooper directed the pilots to set a course for Mexico City. However, he had specific instructions for how the plane should be flown, at an altitude of 10,000 feet and at a slower than usual speed. These unusual directions raised suspicion, but the pilots followed his commands. Cooper, meanwhile, continued to behave calmly, even kindly. There were no signs of aggression or panic, further mystifying those who later tried to understand his motives. As the plane flew south, something extraordinary happened. Cooper asked Mucklow to go into the cockpit with the pilots and lock the door behind her. Alone in the cabin, Cooper prepared for what was to come. A warning light flashed in the cockpit, indicating that the rear staircase of the Boeing 727 had been deployed, an unusual feature that allowed the rear of the plane to open mid-flight. It was then that Cooper did the unthinkable. He strapped the ransom money to his body, secured the parachutes, and jumped out of the plane into the night, somewhere over the dense forests of Washington state. The pilots, locked in the cockpit, could only speculate about what had happened. At around 8:13 p.m., they noticed a sudden upward tilt in the plane, indicating that Cooper had jumped. The plane continued on to Reno, Nevada, where it landed safely, but the mysterious hijacker was gone. When investigators searched the plane, they found little evidence of Cooper's presence. His tie, a tie clip, and a few cigarette butts were all he left behind. There was no bomb, no money, and no parachutes. The man known as D.B. Cooper had vanished into thin air, along with the $200,000 in cash. From that moment, the FBI launched one of the most extensive manhunts in U.S. history. They scoured the area where they believed Cooper had jumped, searching for any sign of the man or the money. But the dense forests and rugged terrain made the search difficult. Despite their best efforts, no trace of Cooper was found. Initially, many believed that Cooper couldn't have survived the jump. He had leapt into a stormy night, with high winds and freezing temperatures. He wasn't dressed for the conditions, and he was carrying a heavy load of cash. But as time went on, the possibility that he had survived began to gain traction. After all, in the months following Cooper's hijacking, several copycat hijackers used the same tactics to escape, and they all survived. One such hijacker was Martin McNally, who, in June 1972, demanded $500,000 and jumped from a plane at a much higher speed than Cooper. Despite the danger, McNally survived. Another, Richard LaPointe, made a similar jump in January 1972, and he too lived to tell the tale. These cases raise the question, if these men could survive such dangerous jumps, why couldn't D.B. Cooper? As the FBI continued to investigate, more clues emerged. In 1980, nearly 9 years after the hijacking, an 8-year-old boy discovered $5,800 in cash along the banks of the Columbia River. The serial numbers on the bills matched those given to Cooper, but no other evidence was found. The discovery led investigators to believe that Cooper had landed somewhere near the Washougal River, but the trail went cold once again. The mystery of D.B. Cooper's identity also remains unsolved. Over the years, the FBI compiled a list of over 800 suspects, but none could be definitively linked to the crime. Some of the more prominent suspects included Richard McCoy, who executed a nearly identical hijacking just 5 months after Cooper, and Robert Rackstraw, a Vietnam veteran with a suspicious history. However, no concrete evidence ever surfaced to prove that either man was D.B. Cooper. The only physical clues left behind by Cooper were his tie and tie clip. In 2009, a team of scientists examined the tie using advanced technology and discovered microscopic particles of unalloyed titanium. This suggested that Cooper may have worked in the aerospace industry, possibly even at Boeing. However, this lead, like so many others, failed to bring investigators any closer to solving the case. In 2016, after 45 years of searching, the FBI officially closed the D.B. Cooper case. Despite decades of investigation, the identity of D.B. Cooper remains a mystery, and the case is still the only unsolved hijacking in U.S. history. So, who was D.B. Cooper? Did he survive that fateful jump, or did he perish in the wilderness, his remains lost to time? The answers to these questions may never be known. But one thing is certain, the legend of D.B. Cooper will continue to captivate and intrigue people for generations to come. What do you think? Could Cooper have survived the jump, or was his fate sealed the moment he stepped out of that plane? Share your thoughts in the comments below.